All right, let's talk about artificial sweeteners. This is one of the biggest debates in nutrition, right? You see them in everything. Diet sodas, sugar-free yogurts, you name it. But the big question is, do they actually help you, or are they secretly making things worse?
And that really is the big question, isn't it? On one hand, there is zero-calorie tool that seems perfect for weight loss. On the other, you hear these horror stories online about how they mess with your body and can even make you gain weight. So what's the real deal?
Okay, so first let's dive into that really scary story you've probably heard. It's a compelling idea, this notion that sweeteners are basically tricking your body. So the whole theory kicks off the second that sweet taste hits your tongue. Your brain goes, hey, sugar's coming, and it sends a message down to your pancreas to start pumping out insulin. It's like your body's trying to get a head start on processing the sugar it expects. But here's where the theory takes a dark turn. With a diet drink, the sugar never shows up. So now your body is supposedly left with all this extra insulin floating around. And since insulin is a hormone that tells your body to store energy, the fear is that your body gets confused and just starts storing fat even though you didn't consume any calories. And it gets worse. The theory doesn't stop there. It claims that your body, feeling completely cheated out of the sugar it was promised, basically goes into revenge mode. It supposedly cranks up your cravings for real sugar, making you hungrier and sending you on a mission for donuts or cookies, which, of course, would completely wipe out the whole point of having a zero-calorie drink. I mean, that's a pretty convincing story, right? It makes a lot of intuitive sense. But the real test is, does it actually hold up when we look at the hard scientific evidence? Let's find out. So here's our first big reality check. A major 2017 systematic review, which is where scientists gather up a bunch of high-quality studies to find the overall consensus, looked at this exact thing. Their conclusion? That sweet taste from sweeteners has, and I quote, limited effects on our blood sugar and insulin levels. Basically, barely a blip on the radar.
Okay, but, and this is a huge but, it's not quite that simple. The very same review pointed out that other kinds of studies, these observational ones, do find a link between people who drink a lot of diet soda and a higher risk for things like type 2 diabetes. So what gives? How can both be true? This is where we need to put on our detective hats.
To get to the bottom of this, we kind of have to understand that not all science is the same. The whole reason this topic is so confusing is because different types of studies can give you wildly different-looking results.
Let's break down the two main players here. On one side, you have observational studies. They just, well, observe people. They might notice that people who drink diet sodas also happen to have higher rates of obesity. But, and this is key, they can't prove one causes the other. That's just a correlation. On the other side, you have the gold standard, the randomized controlled trial, or RCT. This is where scientists actually intervene. They'll give one group the diet drink and another a placebo, and that's how you can actually figure out cause and effect.
And that leads us right to this giant trap in observational research called reverse causation. It's this tricky idea that you might have your cause and your effect completely backwards.
So here it is, the million-dollar question those observational studies can't answer. Are the diet drinks causing the health problems, or are people who already have health problems or are trying to lose weight the ones who are choosing to drink diet drinks? See, it's a total chicken or the egg problem.
And when you look at the data, you can see just how messy this gets. One study found that the people drinking the most diet beverages were also more likely to be obese, to be less active, to be smokers, and to just have a poor quality diet in general. So can you really blame the diet drink? Or is it just one small part of a much bigger picture? Okay, so if we want to cut through all that noise and confusion, we have to turn to the gold standard of evidence. These meta-analyses that pool together all the best randomized controlled trials. This is how we find out what really happens.
So check this out. In 2020, scientists gathered up 34 separate human trials with hundreds of participants. They had one simple goal: to finally settle the question of whether artificial sweeteners actually spike your insulin.
And the answer? A big fat 0. When you put all the highest quality evidence together, there was no meaningful, statistically significant effect on insulin at all. That whole scary story about your body getting confused and pumping out insulin, the best evidence says it just doesn't happen.
And the scientists themselves didn't mince words. They concluded that these sweeteners had no statistically significant effects on either blood sugar or insulin after you consume them. That's a pretty direct takedown of that popular internet theory.
Okay, so insulin is off the table. But what about the thing we all really care about? Body weight. Well, another massive meta-analysis from 2022 looked at 17 top-tier RCTs with almost 2,000 people to see what happened to their weight when they used sweeteners. And what they found is pretty wild. When people swapped sugary drinks for artificially sweetened ones, they lost, on average, about a kilogram. That's a little over 2 pounds. But get this, that was about the exact same amount of weight they lost when they swapped sugary drinks for plain old water.
All right, we have waded through the scary internet theories, the confusing observational studies, and now the gold standard science. So let's just boil this all down to what it actually means for you.
And honestly, it really comes down to this. If you were replacing something sugary with something that has an artificial sweetener, the evidence points to a modest amount of weight loss. But if you're just swapping, say, water for a diet soda, adding it in without taking anything out, the effect is neutral, no real change.
So what's the bottom line here? It seems that artificial sweeteners do exactly what they say on the tin. They give you a sweet taste without the calories, and when you use them as a tool to help you cut your overall calorie intake, they seem to work. They don't have some strange, magical fat-storing power.
So we've pulled apart the science, we've separated the scary stories from what the highest quality evidence is actually telling us. Look, sweeteners aren't some kind of magic diet pill, but they also don't seem to be the metabolic villains they're so often made out to be. So I guess the only question left is this. Now that you've seen the data, how does that change the choices you make every day? Thanks for joining me.